High five me.
Before we jump into your constructed responses, couple things here. Remember tomorrow, vocab list. So bring in your vocab list for number 7. You can either bring in the paper copy. Some of you like typing it up and then share that document with me. I'm okay with that. I have no preference as to which one you want to do. When we're done going over your constructed response, we're going to do some background notes for the last thing that we're going to read, which is The Man in the Water. Traditionally, so far, typically, we do the background notes, then you go home, read the story, and then we'll do reading check quiz and all that kind of stuff. The Man in the Water is different in the sense that we're just going to read it together. So there is not a reading check quiz that you have to worry about. There's not an Ed Puzzle video that you have to go home and watch or anything. Just follow along with what we do for the background, and then we'll start reading it maybe end of class today, but definitely tomorrow. So if you are not here tomorrow, because I know some of you have some trips and all that kind of stuff, just make sure that you do start picking up with Man in the Water, which is right after where And of Clay or We Created finished. For your constructed responses, I want to try to hit on a whole bunch of different things here that people might have questions about. So if at the top of your sheet it says DNF, and I think I even wrote it, bless you, in red, that means that you did not finish, okay? So I was just marking it down as DNF, did not finish. That does not mean that, does not fulfill necessary requirements and therefore fails, or done, nothing, failure, is not what it means. Simply means DNF, did not finish. Here's what I did for this, and if you have a DNF on yours, you still have a score written on it down at the bottom. Everyone would have a number that is 1 to 3, which I would have circled. So it might say 3, and then it could say equal 9 out of 10. What that means is in Power School, you would have a 9 out of 10 showing up in the grade book. The 3 would be what is on the rubric that is on the back of the constructed response. So when you flip it over, you see the score of 0, which no one had, and then a 1, a 2, a 3. If you recall, I mentioned to you the other day that for the scoring of this, to make it give me a little bit more flexibility, you could be getting scores of a 3 plus, a 3, or a 3 minus. So if you got a 3 plus, you got a 10 out of 10. If you got a 3, you got a 9 out of 10. If you got a 3 minus, you got an 8 out of 10. That just simply means that I'm saying on a Keystone exam, I think you're going to be getting a 3. But the 3 plus to 3 minus just gives me the flexibility to let someone know you're at a really strong 3 if you're at a 3 plus. If you're at a 3 minus, you're still doing good work, but you're getting closer to the characteristics of a 2. And so then I did the same thing for 2. So if you had a 2 plus, that would be a 7. If you had a 2, that would be a 6. If you had a 2 minus, that would be a 5. I told you yesterday that I want the prompt at the end of class. Prompt was due at the end of class. On a Keystone exam, there is no time limit to a multiple choice or a constructed response. So if you had a DNF, you did not finish, that doesn't mean that you would be limited to whatever score I gave you with the 2 minus, the 2 plus. You could have had a DNF and still be getting a 3 minus 3. You would have time to do whatever you would want. So if you have a DNF on yours, you can take the prompt home, you can finish writing it, you can give it back to me, and then I'll give you the full credit for it, okay? So if you have a DNF and it says 2, and equals 6 points. Right now in Power School, you have 6 points. You could give it back to me, and you could earn, upwards of like a 10 or something. If you did finish it in class, and this isn't something that I'm going to do for every single constructed response, if you did finish it in class, though, I added 2 points to your score. So if it says that you have a 9 out of 10, that means if you go to Power School, it should really say that you have an 11 out of 10. So there would be a bonus point. If you have a 10 out of 10, it should say that you have a 12 out of 10. So one thing that you would want to do, if you got full score on your constructed response, you want to double check in Power School that I did give you your 2-point bonus for having completed it. If you have a DNF on yours, so you did not finish, you're going to bring it back to me like tomorrow. I'll give you the full credit that you could get. You just don't get the 2-point bonus for finishing it in class. So you still can get full credit so far as earning 100%, but there just wouldn't be the bonus points for being able to kind of finish it within the 40 minutes. Any questions about scores or anything with it? So if it says DNF, you can bring it back. If you don't, I'm not going to hound you asking you for it because there's already a grade in the grade book. So you know what the score is, but you also know you have the ability to resubmit and get some more points for it. Certainly, if you have, if you're going to resubmit it to me, your score is not going to go down because you're only adding information. You're not going to be taking stuff away that would make the score, subtract or anything. Okay. Real quick, a couple things. I don't know if you personally would agree or notice, but I would say since, you don't need to toss it, just hold on to it. I would say since we were doing our first paragraphs, our first essays, since like Oedipus Rex, the way that folks are writing so far as understanding the compound, the simple, the complex sentences has definitely improved. There is not going to be anything on your Keystone exam that is going to say, Logan, you need to write a compound sentence, you need to write a complex sentence, you need to write a simple sentence. However, if you get it into your mind that if I go with a complex sentence to introduce the passage, I can explain it to cite it. I can explain it in a simple and a compound sentence. You will probably have enough information to be able to get the 3. So if you got a 3, I don't want you to look at it as, wow, that's a surprise. I didn't think I could do that. I would say I would look at that as that's really what you should be able to do based on the structure of having 3 examples and going into full detail about those examples. All of you can write perfectly fine, perfectly well. The nice thing also about yesterday was, and even if you did not finish, that's fine, all of you yesterday were focused on what it was that you had to get done. There wasn't an issue so far as I don't know what to write about. You were locating your examples right off the bat. One of the things that we're going to work on in progression is, not me going to come around and go, hey, Jack, I think that'd be a good example to write about, or that was, on this page, where you're going to have to kind of locate all of those on your own when it comes to Keystone. But vast majority of you were looking more for, would this be a good example to use as opposed to where is a good example? You were able to find them, know what to write about. I think in some ways it's just being a little bit more confident that, yeah, it'll be good enough. Any questions? All right. Yeah, clean sheet of notebook paper. Because we're going to talk about the man in the water.
Do you believe that it's important to retain information from high school?
Yeah. I mean, you
I know
can.
it sounds like a dumb question.
Yes. Is it important to know things from high school?
Is it important to remember things that you've learned, pretty much?
Yes. Are you going to remember? Do I remember every single thing that I learned in high school?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying,
yeah.
the whole idea of remembering things that you've learned.
Yes.
Because Mr. Graziani believes that that's not true 100%. He says that if you have notes, then you're A-okay. And he got mad when I argued about it. But he also thinks that people are addicted to water. He doesn't think that we just need it. What? Mr. Graziani. He said that...
I'm addicted to coffee, which has a lot of water in it, so
that's different.
I can't.
Caffeine and sugar is a... Caffeine is addictive. Water is just water. Your body needs it.
It doesn't even have to be. I'll drink decaf. I don't know. There's something about the terrible taste that I know.
Your brain saying that when you drink coffee, you feel like coffee.
Probably, yeah.
I just like water's like diet. But he was like, hey, you're addicted. And I was like, no, pal, you're a chemist. How do you not? How can you be a chemist if you're saying that it's not important to understand?
Do an exercise.
And spell
What second?
Said that he didn't know how to spell orange.
I have a question about this. For this, is that just put like that because it was late?
It's like, it's not even that big of a deal that I got to know.
Tommy, what do you think this passage is going to be about? In the water. Whatever gate gives you that idea.
What if he's not? Dude, it's probably a plot twist. What if he fell while he was fishing?
Maybe an escaped man who's in the water.
That's a cool looking helicopter.
This one
Dude, that sounds like me.
is NF meaning non-fiction. So this is not a story. This is considered an essay. It's a shorter piece, although not that your short stories have really been very long. They are, after all, short stories. But this one is non-fiction. So, before, when Dylan asked the question about Azucena and Rolf, like, why doesn't Rolf leave and go get the pump? And I gave the cop-out teacher answer of, well, Dylan, it's a piece of fiction, so we can't really fully explain why he would do that. But he could be kind of thinking this. This is one where it doesn't mean we can necessarily come up with the answers, but there could be valid questions as to, well, why did this happen? Why didn't he do that? Because we can try to think about, okay, what was the situation that he, she, individuals were certainly in with it. But yeah, this is Man in the Water. It's about a real event that happens in Washington, D.C. in 1982. We'll go over the details here in a moment. It's paired up with And of Clare We Created in the sense that there's still a disaster that kind of takes place. In some ways, it's a natural disaster. In some ways, it's some other things, but it's different. It's kind of nice in the sense of we know we're dealing about reality here, not something that is kind of being from historical events. I don't need you to write the quote down, but we got a quote here from Ralph Waldo Emerson about heroism being an obedience to a secret impulse within an individual's character. Secret impulse. What's it mean if it's like a secret impulse? Any ideas? You got two words, secret and impulse. What's an impulse? It can be a strong feeling, a feeling to do something, and more often than not, if it tends to be impulsive, it's something that just happens. Like you have an impulse to do that. Nate has an impulse to stand up and flip the table. Not a good idea, but it might be an impulse. Oh, you're tapping that pencil like there's some rage that's just about to explode. I'm tired of these vocabulary lists, Mr. Kane. He's actually looking at Gavin when I mentioned that rage and impulse, and I don't know what that means. But so if it's an impulse, it's something that it's an urge, it's a strong feeling to do something, and if it's a secret one, it might be something that you don't necessarily know is there. So heroism is an obedience, or heroism is the ability to kind of listen to that secret impulse to do something that helps kind of reveal the person you would be. Normally we do this at the end of the notes trying to think of something. This one's very simple. Take a moment or two here. Give me a definition of hero or heroism. So give me a definition for what a hero is, or give me a definition, 1 or 2 sentences, of what heroism would be. So hero being the person, heroism kind of being the action. Then list some people. Give me at least 3 people, past or present, famous or ordinary, whom you regard as heroes. It could be someone who you would expect most people to view as being a hero, or it could be an individual who, to you personally, you would identify as being a hero based on some kind of experience. But if you wanted to go with like a general occupation, a fireman is a hero, or you have a specific individual, you could do that. But give me a 1 to 2 sentence definition of either hero, heroism, and then what would be some examples?
What about like a fake hero, like Batman? Or like,
For now, I want to keep it as to nonfiction since we're kind of dealing with it. But yeah, certainly.
He's goaded up.
Certainly superheroes and things like that. Yeah,
A person who is goaded.
No bonus points for identifying me as your hero.
Dang it. What was my plan?
I know. Good use of the word foil. Appreciate that. You don't have to write out why you think each person is a hero. This is something that we'll just kind of talk about.
Mr. King's my hero. He teaches English. That's why
He helps me retain information from textbooks.
Who's my hero? I'm your hero. You just put a ski mask on. My hero is my pet.
It's not a person. Also, no pets, stuffed animals. action figures.
I could see a pet being a hero.
Stein hero.
Every time the mailman barks.
Have you ever seen that Underdog movie, that Disney movie? That
I
dog.
didn't say that.
Don't bring up that movie. That was a terrible movie.
That was pretty bad.
It was a wonderful cartoon.
No, it's a bird.
It's
Underdog.
Well, I'm not saying that they don't have the potential or capability of being heroic, but for consistency's sake, we're going with people.
I said it's someone who people
Keeps them in check.
Hey, he's fireman and a doctor's or heroes.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that means Pokemon. G-H-A-N-D-I. That's how you spell it. It's a person. Yo. Oh.
No, are you sure?
I'm pretty sure it's H-I-G-A-N-D-H.
Just let me know. How do you spell volume? No, wait, what did you say?
Yeah, that's wrong.
Your name.
I didn't even hear what you said past this third letter.
Mia, what'd you define? Hero or heroism?
Hero.
What'd you define as? Okay. What was your definition for hero?
Just somebody that risks their life to save someone. I mean, that's what I'm.
Okay, so risking your life to save someone else.
Yes.
Okay. Other definitions for hero? So we got risking life.
You don't have to risk your life, but just somebody who helps people.
Okay, so there's still assistance in helping where and not trying to figure out which definition is better than the other. Mia's is going to kind of be more in that life-saving kind of way. You could be looking at that or some subtler, smaller, less individual things. Impactful, maybe.
Someone who will help know.
Shh, gentlemen. I'm sorry, they were bugging me.
I said it's somebody who will help no matter what without any regard to themselves.
Okay, so help no matter what without personal. Okay. So by regard, it could be like risking your life, or it could be like
Just going out of your way.
helping someone, but I don't expect anything in return for it. Okay, Connor.
Hero is a person who saves someone or something or fights for what's right.
Okay. So with that second one, like, or fights for what's right, you could say a person is doing something heroic, even though there might not be a specific individual, like fighting for, some kind of civil rights, equal rights. There might not be one individual that you're trying to rescue or help, but you're still fighting for what's going to be right, just. And that's where then Cesare goes, that's why Batman's a hero.
Yep.
Or Superman. Aquaman.
Deadpool.
Wait, how'd you
Deadpool's a G.
Superman's not a human being, Nate. We're going at human beings. He's an alien.
Yeah, but Man.
What?
He's a false god who's killed more people than he's helped.
What would be? I knew I was going to get in trouble for mentioning this with Nate. What would be non-specific individuals that you have listed as heroes? So, like Logan, give me an example of one. I know you have when I mean non-specific, not a particular individual, just like a label.
Oh, I put doctors or EMTs.
Okay, so doctors, EMTs, we have listed as being potential heroes. What else?
Maybe like Red Cross.
Red Cross. Okay.
Specific people?
Well, we can, but I'm just starting with general ones now. So doctors, EMT, Red Cross. Okay, parents, family members, fifth period English teachers, all those things. First responders. All right, now. Shh. Oh.
What about English teachers?
Have you ever had my wife as a math teacher?
Mr. King.
Might not. Now, specific individuals. Any specifics?
Scotty Ross.
Explain.
He helped
My
me
heroes have to spell
one night.
right.
I got a really bad headache. And Scotty Ross was making sure that I was good.
Scott Ross do be a hero. He gives me gum
Yeah.
every day.
I don't know Scott Ross.
Scotty Ross is a G.
He gives me gum every day, and he'll go.
So is
"What
he
my
like
last
student
piece?"
here?
Oh,
or-
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
anyway, I'm like, he's goated.
So he helps you out.
Yeah.
All right.
He's goated. I literally put that.
Especially at the holiday time. Especially at holiday time.
Yeah.
Why?
I'm sweaty.
I don't know, because Gavin said she wasn't, and I wanted to prove him wrong. He said no. He said people that help people around. Martha Stewart help people cook. Is she a hero?
To some people.
I would say in comparison to the events that we're going to go over for this one, probably not. All right, here's what's happening. This is where we do need to start writing some things down for Man in the Water. Roger Rosenblatt is author of this. This is not character that we're going to be taking a look at. But the situation, Roger Rosenblatt is reflecting on a plane crash that took place in 1982 that ends up, it's a big news story that literally does grip the hearts of millions of people. And we'll kind of explain the circumstances and why. A lot of folks, and this is before, you're concerned about acts of terrorism and all that kind of stuff that sometimes people now, post 9/11, certainly associate with plane crashes and things like that. This is an accident that happens. And you certainly have plane crashes that do happen out of accident. This one becomes a little bit different because the heroism of a few people, especially the anonymous, meaning we don't know who he was at the time, we do now, and I'll be able to kind of explain it to you, but the heroism of the man in the water is something that really kind of separates this tale from others. I shouldn't say this tale, this event, this story, since it is a piece of nonfiction that we're looking at. So the next slide is going to be a lengthy one that I don't need you to write word for word, but this one I want you to be clear. Rosenblatt is the author, so he is reflecting. We were taking a look at the different types of writing, the different purposes of writing from And of Clara We Created. You remember that there is the purpose to entertain, there is the idea to inform, there is the idea to persuade. And we'll kind of see which one of those, whether individually or collectively, he tends to tap into with entertainment, informing, persuading. But him writing about this in 1982, it would be him writing about an event that everyone would certainly be aware of. It's not that he's introducing an event to someone for the first time, or it's not like it's happening in a place that is a little bit more remote, like Colombia in 1985 with the volcanic eruption and all that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, if you think about a tragedy, and Tree of Life shooting in Squirrel Hill, that would be something where people all across the country were aware of. So if you were to write an essay about it in the upcoming weeks that follow, you wouldn't have to go into a whole lot of explanation about what happened. Not right now, no. You never know. I don't want to say no and then change my mind, but it's not planned right now. Specifically, here are the details as to what's happening. Disaster takes place in January 1982, January the 13th, so unlucky date, I guess, in that way. The location is Washington, D.C., so you're in the nation's capital. So the fact that you're in D.C., a place that a lot of people are obviously going to be familiar of, being the capital, government being there, and whatnot, certainly makes it a big issue as well. 1982, D.C.'s having one of the worst winters. Whole East Coast is having one of the worst winters that they've had in like probably 20, 25 years. Not that you have 8 feet of snow falling at one time, but it's a very cold winter, frigid temperatures, and it's also just one where you continually have snowstorm after snowstorm after snowstorm. So you're getting pelted with stuff left and right. No, this part you don't have to write down word for word, just kind of going over it. You have a plane that is going from Washington to Tampa, Florida, Air Florida Flight 90. So it's taking off from Washington National Airport. Washington National, there's a couple airports all around the D.C., Baltimore area. There's BWI, which is Baltimore, Washington International. There's Dulles, which is close to Washington. Washington National Airport's a little bit different in the sense that it is very much within the heart of the city, or very close to it. It's only about 3 miles from the Capitol. And it's along the banks of the Potomac. Potomac is the main river that's going through Washington, D.C. So like how we would have Ohio, Allegheny, Monongahela, they have the Potomac. So this is very close to within the city. Plane takes off, going to Tampa, and then just after takeoff, within less than a minute, it starts to go down, and it hits the 14th Street Bridge. It is rush hour within Washington, D.C. It's about 3, 4 o'clock. the plane crashes into a bridge. So it would be similar to having a plane take off at Pittsburgh International Airport, and then it hits the Liberty Bridge, Fort Pitt, Fort Duquesne, something like that. Obviously, you're going to have lives lost with the plane crash, people on the plane, but now you're also throwing in the fact that you have 5 cars being crushed, a truck is being kind of tipped over, crashing into the Potomac River as well, so you got commuters who are kind of in danger. What also makes this pretty difficult with the weather conditions? The water is going to be freezing cold. So the plane goes into the river. It's a significantly large plane. There's not a whole lot of people on it at the time. There's 79 people who are aboard the plane. That includes pilots, flight attendants, and then also the passengers who are on it. 74 of those 79, I believe, are passengers. The plane breaks into 3 sections, and so it's going into the water. So if you did survive the initial impact plane crash, now you're dealing with freezing cold temperatures, and you need to get out of that water before hypothermia is going to start to kind of set in. So it's a situation that, because it's happening in the nation's capital, it's going to be a big news story. Because it's a plane crash, it's going to be a big news story. Because you have now commuters involved with it, it's going to be a big news story. Throw all those things into one, certainly folks are going to be well aware of what's happening with it. In total, 78 people end up dying. 4 of them would be motorists, so people who aren't even on the plane. Of the 79 people aboard the plane, you have only 5 who survived, 4 passengers and 1 flight attendant. The probable cause for the accident was that there was ice on the plane's wings. They did go through de-icing procedures, as would be normal. The problem is, because you had a winter storm going on, you have planes that are kind of waiting for the others to take off. It took roughly about an hour from the last de-icing treatment of the wing before the plane took off. Ice formed again, plane goes to take off, it's able to get into the air, but there's too much drag that's not allowing it to really get full into its jet stream and take off. So it's an accident. They certainly did treat it, but the weather conditions just made it pretty much impossible for the plane to be able to get very far. So the man in the water that we're going to be looking at, as to the context for it, not someone hiding out in Siberia or spy or thing like that, but you have a plane going down. One of the survivors who ends up being considered a hero is the fact that he is the man in the water, and we'll kind of get into the specific details that he's doing that allows him to become so heroic. We've been reading short stories, and so this part we do want to kind of go back to writing down, and I know this is going to be pretty straightforward, probably seem pretty obvious, but just make sure we're clear with it. We're looking at an essay. We're not looking at a short story. So it's a personal or an informal essay. It's a short piece of nonfiction that examines a single subject from a limited point of view. Limited point of view in the sense that it is coming from the perspective of the author, of the writer. More often than not, it's probably going to be a person who was not there, that didn't necessarily witness things firsthand, as is going to be the situation that we have here. The big thing is it expresses the writer's thoughts and feelings about a particular subject. So when we say we're going to write an essay, there tends to be the collective groan because, oh, that's going to be an English class writing assignment that we have to worry about. But at its heart, in its definition, an essay is a person giving their insight, their opinion, their thoughts about some type of individual subject. You folks tend to not like essays because you don't get to pick the subject. You don't get to pick the requirements for it. But if you were simply just to go home and write about an individual subject, journal, diary entry, that would pretty much fit the bill of what would be in a personal or an informal essay. Tends to be not necessarily reflection, but collection of thoughts, feelings. If we are getting the writer's thoughts and feelings, is it subjective or objective? If we're getting your thoughts and feelings coming across, that means we're dealing with something that is subjective. And that will certainly be the case with what we have going on today, or with this piece here. Couldn't tell if that was a cough or a sneeze or a... I'm not, I just wasn't sure.
Why are you making fun of me?
So, nonfiction, subjective in the sense that we get thoughts, feelings about a particular specific subject. personal essays and still keep track of this little bullet points as to what can be located within personal essays. You could dealing with a wide range of subjects, so it doesn't mean there's just one particular thing that you have to deal about, and often examines the subject from different perspectives. So if you're dealing with an issue of like a plane crash like this, news reporters, whether it be on TV or whether it be newspapers, you're going to want to talk to the survivors, you're going to want to talk to witnesses, people who were there. This is kind of giving a different perspective of someone who would be from the outside. You could have essays that are certainly written about the same subject, multiple essays, but if they're coming from people of different background, different gender, race, ethnicity, religion, ages, things like that, it offers different perspectives on those things. They can take a variety of tones, so with a variety of tones, you tend to get a variety of different moods as well. Rosenblatt seems to be pretty serious and thoughtful in the fact that he is kind of reflecting about something, but he also tends to be very optimistic. If someone is optimistic, what would be our synonym for it?
Positive.
Positive, hopeful, you see good things. So certainly a tragedy takes place with the amount of lives that were lost, but he remains optimistic and hopeful that good things can kind of be learned from it. And not just about how to de-ice a plane better, but how, to handle adversity situations, things like that. Based on the definition that was having you write at the very beginning, you can also assume that he probably looks at the man in the water as being hero or heroic actions for what it is that he ends up doing. Why do you think he refers to him as the man in the water?
Because he's in the water.
Why not go, this is an essay about Jim Smith, where like we give a specific name as opposed to the man in the water?
Draws the reader in.
Okay. Draws reader in. Heroes don't always have, or can be like ordinary people. Doesn't have to be a label that goes along with it.
Something.
Other thing here, certainly take a look at, and we were discussing theme when it came to the short story with Anne of Clay and the newspaper article that came after. The main idea of a work is an insight or message about the subject the writer wants to communicate. So if we were looking at an objective news article about the flight, they would want to focus on the facts that were taking place. So a news article might be taking a look at the time of liftoff, the number of passengers that were aboard, what were the de-icing procedures that were taking place, how could this have been prevented, where was it headed, what are the names of the pilot, the co-pilot, the flight attendant, and all that kind of stuff. Rosenblatt's not really going to be focusing on those I shouldn't say minor. He's not going to be focusing on those specific details. So after reading the essay, you're not going to know the name of every single victim. You're not going to know all the procedures that necessarily were taking place. But he wants to share an idea, a way of thinking about the event. He wants to kind of give a different perspective. So some of the details might still be a little cloudy or foggy for us, but we would certainly know what is the concept overall that he wants to present to us. All right. Anyone need me to go back to previous slides? Okay. Amy, since you offered before, you want to flip a light back on?
Oh.
Your pupils are readjusting. All right. You can close notebook. Let's take out elements of literature book that's sitting right in front of you. We are going back into the 300s. Going to page 322. So, if for tomorrow you're going to be bringing in, Nate, you're going to be bringing in your vocab list. You're not responsible for finishing the story. We're going to, or finishing the account. We'll continue reading with it tomorrow. If for some reason you're not going to be able to be here tomorrow, for Monday when you come back, I would strongly urge you that you want to finish reading the essay so that you'll be able to pick up with what we're going to do. For next week, the way the schedule looks like it's probably going to happen is I'd say next Thursday is when we would be doing our combined test for And of Claire we created in Man in the Water, and then Friday, before you head off for a break, is when we'll take care of that last little vocab test that we're going to do. So we are on page 320.